Welcome back to the Nose Plays. Today is my official review and some introductory tips for beginners with the game Diluvion Resubmerged. So, a little bit about Diluvion. Diluvian's a game that came out quite a while ago. It came out to a lot of lofty expectations, and I think that's because um, the developers did a really amazing job with a good portion of the game, and that really shined particularly in their advertisement of the game. Um, you can see, if you've seen any footage of this game, that it just looks amazing. The music is amazing. Um, the artistic style just really fits very well with the game, and it's just a really neat looking game. But there were some problems when it came out, and I did not pick it up upon release. There were a lot of mixed reviews. I always had it on my wish list for a little over a year now, I think. Maybe even longer. I might have even had this on my radar in early access. I don't remember. And I've seen it on sale a number of times and have come close to pulling the trigger, but just never did. Recently, the developers went back. They did a second pass of the game. They did a massive patch to the game where they fixed a lot of the issues with the UI and some of the issues with the AI and some of the issues with just a lot of the things that people were complaining about. They readdressed it and renegotiated how they wanted those things to work in the game, put it all together, and made this big massive patch called Resubmerged and basically re-released their game. So I don't have any experience from the older game to really know how it differs from what it is now. There is some footage you can go back and watch and read reviews of the initial release from various people, and it's definitely an improvement. That much is clear. Most people who have come back to the game have said it's significant improvement over the original release of Diluvian. I have found it to be an interesting game. I will say that I don't know how much time I'm going to put into it. It's a very cool game though, and I have been really enjoying the time that I have put into it so far. And I've come to understand a few things about the game, some tips or tricks or helpful beginners thoughts on how you might pick up this game if you're interested in starting out. So we're going to go through that, and this will be just kind of my first impressions video, or second impression, I guess, if you want, since we already did kind of a first impressions video where I dipped my toes in the water for the very first time. It was a little rough, I'll admit, but I've gotten a lot better since then in terms of being able to control my submarine and do different things. So the first thing that I want to do is let's go ahead and look at the settings that you have available to you. This is a really important menu that you need to get familiar with for various reasons, and I'll explain that a little bit in a minute. But so there's a lot of settings here. Mouse sensitivity, joystick sensitivity, these things are not that critical to me. Aim area size, we'll talk about what this does. Camera distance and camera offset are two really important things that you need to play around with in this game. I highly recommend, once you get into the game, once you experience it a little bit, to come back to this menu and start playing around with these settings and find the settings that work best for you in terms of how you control your submarine. Being able to reposition where the submarine is on the screen is a really important feature, and different people are going to prefer different settings. So don't feel like you're stuck with whatever the default settings are. Come in here, play around with it, figure out what you like, and then go from there. For the most part, the camera work is pretty good in this game. There are some issues where the camera gets stuck inside of walls or inside of other structures, and so my preference is, if you're having issues with that and that's constantly becoming an issue, lower the camera distance so you're closer to your submarine, and that sort of restriction of your vision temporarily will be less cumbersome and less common. If you want to be able to see more about like what's going on around you and have more of a big open picture, obviously you want your camera distance wide, but that does present the problem of, especially when you're in narrow spaces or in crowded spaces, your camera's going to clip through things occasionally and it's going to obstruct your vision. So it's a little bit problematic. There's also kind of an intermediate position here, somewhere in the middle, where you get a little bit of both. And so if you're finding you're clipping too much, maybe lower the camera distance. I think that's one real important tip. Camera offset's also really helpful for some people. If you like your submarine like directly in the center of the screen, that's great, you can do that. If you would prefer it to be offset or off to the corner, and where you're kind of traveling at an angle, it's a little odd at first, but it does open up the vision in front of you. So steering is a little bit different depending on how you set this camera offset, and I'll demonstrate some of that once we get in the game. Controls. This is another real important thing that you need to understand. There are two controls, arcade mode and simulator mode. I have tried both of them extensively. I think I was in simulator mode for a good portion of that video that I posted previously, but I could be wrong. Either way, I have come to prefer arcade mode, and I'll explain why in a little bit. You can also map all of the different buttons in the open control mapper. I would recommend spending a little bit of time in here and just getting familiar with what buttons you have available to you, what all the different things are, and what they're bound to initially. Just a quick cursory glance at these things is pretty helpful. If you want to remap them, you can. But we'll explain why I prefer arcade mode to simulator mode once we get in the game. There's a fairly significant difference between these two, and it really depends on your preference and how you're using, or what type of controls you're using to move your ship around. Graphics, there's not a whole lot of graphics. You can change the field of view a little bit, which is helpful. And the UI scale can be adjusted, so if you want the graphics text to be larger or smaller, you can adjust that a little bit. Languages and audio. Not a whole lot else going on here. So we'll definitely come back to these menus in a little bit. We're going to go ahead and start a new game. I'm going to skip most of the cutscenes for this one because we already watched those in the last game. And if you haven't seen them before, they're really, really well done. There's a little bit of reading in this game. There's no voice work, which is unfortunate, but the writing I thought was pretty well done, very humorous. I thought it really fit well. Kind of everybody talks in a gruff, sailory way, and I think it makes sense for the game. So I thought it was pretty cool. We'll definitely look at a little bit of that, but I'm not gonna be reading everything out loud like I did in the previous video. Go ahead and go with the nose plays, and we'll begin a new game. So basically, I'm just going to walk you through the tutorial and point out some of the things that I've learned in my, I don't know, I've got over 10 hours in this game now. We'll skip the intro. So the intro is pretty neat. It gives you a little bit of backstory on the lore of the world, which is really cool. Another real big important thing to note right now is that the game is on sale again for another couple days. So today is October the 8th, 2018. This will be on sale for a pretty significant amount. I think it's like $5 right now for the base game, and the DLC is also on sale at this time. So if you want to pick up some of the DLC, I'll have a recommendation there. But it is available at a really reasonable price, and you can get everything for under $10. So the first thing that I will suggest, and I have tried out, I think, all of the ships that I have available at the beginning of the game now. Start with the Iron Minnow. I know it's probably the least sexy of the three ships, but it is also by far the easiest one to maneuver and handle, and so I would definitely consider starting with it. The other thing that's nice about the Iron Minnow is it has largest storage capacity, and so it makes it a lot easier to quickly build up cash, which you can then use to purchase other submarines later in the game. So if you're interested in just getting the beginner experience, this is definitely what I would recommend. The Diamond is a very cool ship. The controls for the Diamond, because it's so quick and it just maneuvers a little bit differently, I think are harder to deal with. But it's a really neat ship, especially if you're more experienced in the game and you want to be able to get around quicker. A big part of this game is just straight up exploration, and if you already have explored certain areas, having something like the Diamond that can move very quickly to get you through them faster is pretty helpful. And then the Mariana is definitely a more combat-oriented ship if you're interested in that. It does take a little while before you get access to the torpedo function of the ship. But once you have that, you're definitely a lot more dangerous in combat and can do, more pirate runs and look for enemy ships if you're into that. I'm not a huge fan of the combat in this game. I think it works, it's functional, especially once you learn how to do it. The big problem I have with combat is definitely the camera clipping sometimes becomes an issue when you're trying to get in a fight with somebody and it's a little crowded because of the rocks or the reefs or the salvage structures. And your camera clips and it just obscures your view. So I don't appreciate that, but overall I think it's an okay system. We're going to go ahead and go with the Iron Minnow. And again, the music is just fantastic in this game. It creates amazing ambience. The music will change at various points in the game depending on what's going on, so that's really cool. And we'll take a quick look at our ship. And so the next thing that I'm going to highly recommend you do if you don't already have one is get a gamepad and play this with a gamepad. I use a combination of gamepad, mouse, and keyboard when I'm playing. That's what I found works best for me. Some people will find keyboard controls work just fine for them, and they do work functionally well. But for me, absolutely love the controller now that I've learned how to use it a little better. So the way that I control my ship, I have two controls. I can actually move the ship with one joystick and I can move the camera with the other. The camera also kind of directs your firing point. So wherever that little cursor, you see the little green cursor there in the center of my screen, wherever that's pointing, that's basically where I'm going to shoot my guns. If I'm not pointing this little cursor at something, then I won't be able to shoot my guns at it. There are some advantages and disadvantages to both the arcade and the simulation method. The nice thing is, in arcade mode, wherever I point this camera is where my ship is traveling. So no matter what direction I point it, my ship will eventually start moving towards that point. In simulation mode, that is not correct. Your ship will move whatever direction you have it set to, and you can move this camera around. So one of the advantages of running in simulation mode is you can actually fire at somebody off to your port or starboard or even to your rear while moving away from them. The problem is you can't see where you're going when you're doing that, and so in some scenarios that's perfectly fine. You're out in the open water, turn around and shoot at them. But in other times, especially like in an area region like this, if I get in combat and I try to swing my camera around to shoot at somebody, I don't know where I'm going and I'm going to run into something. And so for me, it's a lot easier to control the movement of my ship primarily with the camera and using arcade mode. So if I want to go somewhere, I just point the cursor at it and my ship will go there. If I need to make course corrections, like to avoid an obstacle, I can use the other joystick to give my ship a little bit more motion. So I can use it to avoid an obstacle directly in front of me, or to move up or down, dive, or surface. Although I don't think we technically ever surface in this game. So keep that in mind. I definitely recommend trying both modes out for yourself, but I think you'll find if you use the camera primarily for steering, instead of actually using the ship movement, with a gamepad, you're going to find you're going to have a lot more success in navigating. So let's take a look at the inside of our ship. This is one of the really cool artwork decisions that they made. So everything in the ocean is three-dimensional, and we get these really nice looking aesthetics. Inside the ship, we get a nice 2D cutout of our ship, and we can control where we put people. Our crew will primarily be in the main quarters, but there are several little pods inside of the ship that we can populate with our crew members, and we also have a number of other things going on here. So up here you'll see we have an inventory slot, And then we have these upgrade slots. These 3 upgrade slots are empty currently. We do have an inventory upgrade slot, which increases our inventory by 10. That's why this ship has the larger inventory capacity. You can also build these later in the game for your other ships and increase their inventory capacity, but it does use up your slots. And so as you use up these slots, you kind of max out what the ship's capabilities are. But you can replace them, customize them however you'd like. As you collect more salvage, you'll be able to do that more frequently. And there are also upgrades to the ships themselves, higher tier versions of the ships, I guess you could say, which have more upgrade slots available, so you can do more with them. Your crew will sometimes, one of the things that's kind of annoying, you can kind of zoom in here and get a better look at the fantastic artwork. Your crew will actually spend time in these bunks, so sometimes you're like, oh, where's my crew members at? They're actually sleeping, and so you might zoom in to get a better look at what's going on in this pod, if you're looking for a crew member and you want to move them around. So Jay Treadwasser is your starting crew member. He's your helmsman, and in order to do anything with the helm, with the sonar, or with the gunner, you have to have a primary crew member in that slot. So right now we can't actually move our ship because there's nobody in the controls. So we're going to grab him with the mouse and move him over here. We can do this dynamically. This is pretty cool. So at any point during the game, I can jump to this screen, grab a crew member, and move them from one position to another. If I'm in combat, combat will still continue to persist. So you got to be able to do this quickly if you want to, like, let's say I don't have anybody in my gunner slot and I'm under attack. I need to move people there. And I can still be attacked while that's happening. So it's a good idea to, if you're going into a dangerous area, prep where you want your sailors to be. This is an important room because anybody who's in this room will actually do repairs on your ship. So you actually regenerate hull points over time, and the rate and speed at which that happens is directly related to how many people you have in this particular pod. Again, you can't use your sonar or your guns until you have at least one primary individual in there, and then you can actually add additional helpers. So you can see I have my primary, that's the gold person here, Pip filled in. I can actually have another sailor in this, and it will increase some stats. And so if we read this, we can increase our defense and our engine power based on the statistics of any other crew members we add to this pod. So strength, any sailors that have extra strength will increase the defensive rating of our ship, which I guess is kind of just a reduction to any damage we take. And then engine power, this increases the engine speed of our ship by a percentage. That is specifically tied to the endurance statistic of a sailor. So if we want a very, very fast ship, we want to get a sailor with a high endurance statistic, and we want to equip him into this pod so that he's helping the helmsman. There are similar things for both sonar and gunner. They use different stats for their bonuses. So depending on what bonuses you're looking for, you'll have to hire sailors that fill those needs. I believe the starting ship, or at least this particular starting ship, can have up to 10 sailors, and you can actually expand that with more pods. Well, you'll build another life support pod, and that will increase the number of sailors you can have. So that's pretty helpful. Alright, so now that we've gone over the ship a little bit, let's go ahead and get back out here and let's do a little bit of moving. So this is really helpful. Once you get the hang of it, you can control your speed by using the bumpers on your controller, or it's different buttons on the keyboard and the mouse. The mouse wheel was really driving me nuts because it's super sensitive, and I was constantly moving my speed all around. Using the bumpers on the controller seemed to help me control my speed a lot. I would highly recommend that you start using slow and half speed Don't go to full speed very often until you get a little more comfortable or you're out in the open where there's nothing to run into. It gets really, really easy to run into things and to overshoot. You do carry a little bit of momentum, so if you're moving towards something very quickly and you want to come to a complete stop, you may actually want to go into reverse for just a moment to help kind of put the brakes on and slow you down, and then back to stop. So we're going to go ahead and hit it to slow, and you can see as I turn my camera, my ship will automatically adjust to wherever that camera is facing and head that direction. And this is how arcade mode works. Now if I were to go in and switch it to simulation mode, I could turn my camera, my ship's not going to adjust its motion at all. It's going to continue in the path that it was moving. Now this is strictly using the camera for navigation. I also have the ability to use my other joystick to control the direction of the ship, and I can move up and down, left and right, and then as soon as I let go, it's going to redirect me back towards that targeting. So I can actually still spin around and shoot at things. It's just a little bit awkward, and you can see like it's real easy to run into stuff when you're not paying attention to what you're doing. Now, one thing I do want to demonstrate, I'm going to jump into the menu real quick, and we're going to go to settings, and I want to show you camera distance and camera offset. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the offset to about 1. Let's see. And then we're going to come back into the game, and I'm going to increase the camera distance to about 3. Very, very sensitive. There we go. And you'll see that we've now moved a little bit further back, and the camera is offset just a little bit. When I move into this glacier, you can see how my vision sometimes gets obscured, and so that's one of the issues that I have with having the distance set too far. But you can kind of adjust this. And so if I go into the settings, let's just show you what it looks like at the max. So if I go to the max offset, come back in and resume, you can see that my ship is now off to the side a fair distance. So it kind of moves at an angle. And I think that this is actually the best position for the camera when I've been playing. I've tried it with dead center as well. And so you have basically, this is the furthest you can go. But you can also set the offset to 0, and then you'll see we're directly behind the ship. And so now my camera and my little targeting cursor are always on top of each other. And so this is the other option you have. If you don't like the offset, you can use this. And I've actually come to prefer the offset myself. So I like having the camera offset, but I also like not being too far back. I like being close to the ship, and so we're going to go to 2 for now, and I may actually go a little closer. But what that does is it helps minimize the amount of camera clipping that I get. Now remember, my ship is actually heading towards the cursor, so even though it's at an angle, it looks like if I just point my cursor at something, that's where I'm going to end up. So that's real important. You can also see those little green lights. That is our firing arc for our weapon. And so there are situations where our firing arcs will go red because we can't actually shoot the guns in those particular directions. Again, I can control the fine motor movements of my ship while still maintaining that whenever I let go, it's just going to move towards the camera in arcade mode. So we're going to go ahead and increase our speed a little bit. And I finally have started to get comfortable with the diving and the rising. There was a big issue for me. I'm really comfortable with inverted axis on the y-axis for games like this, particularly flight sim games. I play that way a lot, and it's a really hard habit to undo. So we can dive down here quite a ways. It's just a beautiful game. And turn around here and see. It's kind of where I came from. And if I want to turn a little more quickly, I use the other joystick to help. So this is the camera moving here, but then I can use the other joystick to help steer. Alright, so this is pretty helpful. Anytime you have a quest, you'll see this little compass symbol. Let's see if I can see my mouse here, kind of down here. You can see the compass symbol. That means you have a quest. Oops, camera flipped on me. We're just going to point our camera at the anchor there. So an anchor is a docking point. Anytime you see an anchor on the map, that's a docking point. That's somewhere you can go. If you just point your little cursor at it, you'll eventually end up over there. I can also use my rise and fall to get there a little quicker. And when you get close enough to an anchor point, you'll see it flash like this. This means you're able to dock by pushing the appropriate button. On my controller, it's X. On the keyboard, I can't remember exactly what it is. It may still be X. But whatever it is, you push a button and it'll auto dock you. You don't actually have to steer. You just got to get relatively close to it. You can only ever have one docking thing active at a time. So if there's two of them really close to you, whichever one you're closest to will be the one that will flash like this and allow you to dock to it. And another thing, the anchor symbol, when it's colored in white, means that you haven't been there for this playthrough yet, and so there may be new salvage there to search out, and you can go there and go through the buildings, and we'll look at that here in a moment. Once you've cleared a building, it will go. It will be empty, so the anchor will no longer be filled in. It'll be hollow. So we'll see that after we get through here. And we're back to the 2D cutscene. So the 2D interaction is pretty neat. I like it. The art's cool. I'm just going to quickly talk to Jay, get our quest. Anytime you see a compass, that's part of a quest. And that's going to give you something you can do. I'm just going to skip through this real quick. I've already read it for everybody in the last video. And basically what Jay's saying is he wants to hire some more crew on. We're going to talk to Daniel. Daniel's, I don't want to say a rival, but he's a fellow salvage submariner. Submariner? I don't know. Anyways, he's going to tell you about somewhere you need to go. Bother talking to him. We can interact with all these different people. There's some really good writing for some of them, but this is where we need to go, and we've got to pick a crew member. So remember, we talked about how different crew member stats will affect your submarine when you put them in certain positions. We can get Beth Kelly, we can get Celeste, or we can get Aisha McKinsley. These stats are kind of randomly generated. I'm actually liking the more spread out stats. Gives us a little bit more flexibility, so we might hire both of those. I'm not really interested in her. Let's go ahead and hire this one for sure. And we currently only have 7 crew members, it looks like. I have enough money to hire 2 crew, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And we don't have enough money to hire any more. We could hire more if we wanted to. You can actually have more crew than you actually have active slots for in your submarine. There are some places where you can kind of drop crew off for shore leave, and you can actually have your own base where you kind of customize your base and have kind of a home port for your own submarine and all your gear and all of your crew. But there's a few different places where you can swap crew out for different members if you decide like you have special missions that you need specific crew for. I haven't really encountered that all that much yet, but that is an option. Once all the little compasses are gone, that pretty much is the end. You can still interact with the people, but a lot of times they'll just repeat what they've already said. So we're pretty much done with the dive bar now. We can go ahead and go back to our submarine. And Jay says, let's head west. So to activate your compass, the tutorial is telling us how to do that. Also, I want to point out, notice how the anchor is now hollow. You can see that means we've done everything there that we need to do. So anytime you see a hollow anchor, you've already cleared that region. Anchors that are filled in white still have things to be figured out. We can pull up this compass, which is kind of handy. It's also kind of awkward at times. You can see it's really neat looking, but it kind of gets in the way. So we're going to dive down here a little bit. You can see we need to go west, so I'm just going to point my cursor, and since I'm in arcade mode, we're going to head that direction. And I can turn this compass on and off at will. And then we'll pick up the speed a little bit. You can see as we're traveling this direction, we've picked up another docking point. Go ahead and slow down. You can see we're still moving forward for just a little bit after I hit stop, so we don't stop on a dime like I said. We're close enough to go ahead and dock with this. And this is the first tutorial for basically clearing the, they're kind of like pseudo dungeons. These are the salvage missions. Typically you'll build a boarding party and send some crew, and you'll have to go through these doors. Each door will open a new room, and each room has potential for both loot and for hazards. Sometimes you'll run into enemies, sometimes you'll run into traps, and your boarding party members will have to deal with those things. That is based on their statistical values for the stats that you have allotted to them. So the chances for success or failure are based on their stats and the particular hazard. So anytime you see something that has an animation associated with it when you mouse over it, that is something that can be interacted with. And loot, there's a variety of different types of loot. Some of them are just things that you sell, and some of them have unique properties that can be used in other parts of the game. Generally speaking, it's just best to take everything. Once your hull gets completely full, you'll get the option to swap certain things in or out. That's not generally a big problem with this particular sub, mainly because you have such a large hull space, and there are plenty of places to sell your loot. So we'll just keep grabbing loot and moving through here. Okay. Key areas on the map, like towns or major salvage areas, will have some type of interaction at the end of the dungeon. And once you interact with that, a lot of times that will mark it on your map for you permanently. And so you will now have that as a location on your map that you can get to pretty easily anytime you need to. This time, it's just going to open the door to the next region for us. I think the tutorial for this is pretty well done. Playing through it a couple times now, it definitely teaches the player the basics of how to play the game. You can see my steering has improved immensely from the first game. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for just a second. You can see the golden fish. Actually, let's get through these weeds here. Camera clipping again. Okay. You can see the golden fish. So the golden fish are a really cool part of this game. What they are is kind of a directional waypoint marker. And so you can set a waypoint for one of your quests on the map, and these golden fish will basically direct you to your waypoint. So if you have a quest that you're currently trying to accomplish, or you've set a waypoint on the map, all you got to do to figure out where you need to go is just kind of follow the golden fish. And then as you approach those golden fish, they'll kind of disappear and new ones will appear off in the distance, telling you which direction to continue to move. So pretty helpful. You don't have to follow the golden fish, but they're tied directly to one of your quests typically, so it's a good idea if you're trying to move the storyline forward and complete some of your quests and unlock new stuff to do, to follow that. Now, there are situations where you can have multiple quests active at a time, and the golden fish will only appear for the one that you have selected, or the last one that was chosen, basically. So if you've got 3 things you need to do, you can go to your map and you can set which one you want to do first. Alright, we're going to go ahead and crank it up. And we have some salvage here. So the salvage missions are pretty easy again. There's not much to it. You just find these docking points and go through the rooms, collect anything you find. As I pointed out, the game itself is really, really simple. The big plus of the game is the aesthetic of it, the environment, just the feel, the ambience. But as far as being a difficult game, I haven't found that to be the case. I haven't gotten super far into it, so maybe that changes as you get to other parts of the map. Combat is fairly simple, and interacting with things is fairly simple. It's strictly an exploration game. You get a lot of just enjoying the beauty of the game. I think that's the biggest part of it. At least it has been for me. But if you're looking for a challenging game, or a game that's really complex, that has a lot of strategy, this is probably not the game for you. This is just a game that you get to really enjoy exploring a new world. And yeah, there's some light elements of combat and other things, but they're not that challenging. The game's not a very challenging game at this point. There are definitely going to be some challenging aspects of it later. I'm sure that will be the case, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. There's some real generic RPG elements with the way that you manage your crew and upgrade their stats and deal with the boarding missions. Alright, so he's explaining the golden fish there. You can get to the point where you just run through these salvage missions pretty fast. There's not a lot to it. It's literally look for the little things that have salvage in them and click the next door. That also means that it's incredibly quick and easy to make a fair amount of money. So if you just run through a bunch of places and get the salvage real quick. I'm trying to remember which way we came. Okay, that's not where we want to go. We've already got that one, so we're going this way. We need to move up. Nope. We need to move down. Where are my golden fishies? Jay's telling me we need to put our sailor to use. That's probably a good point. Okay, so mousing over this again, strength and endurance are both stats that are important to the helm. She has both strength and endurance. And she has strength and perception and intelligence. So we're going to go ahead and grab this member and stick her in the helm. When I mouse over this, you can see now we're getting plus 0.8 defense and plus 10% to our engine power for having this extra member in here. However, that is coming at a cost of having one fewer person to do repairs. If we get in a position where our ship is damaged or we're under attack, it might be beneficial to move her back over here so we repair things more quickly. Alright, I'm looking for... There they are. I see them. The golden fish. And again, the biggest problem that I have with the navigation of the ship is the camera clipping. It's a real problem. It's a minor problem, but it's a real problem. Everything else, I've gotten accustomed to the not having the inverted axis, and I've made my peace with that, so to speak. It took me a while. Probably a good 2 or 3 hours to untrain myself. But at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident in my ability to navigate. I've gotten in some fights with pirates and managed to do okay in taking them out. We're at another gate. You'll find these gates throughout the game. They kind of mark off different areas of the map, different zones. And I think there's 3 or 4 major zones. Each zone is pretty massive once you get into the main zones, which we're about to do. Alright, so she's going to need some parts to get this gate open. This is basically telling you if you neglected to grab the salvage, like we just did, to go back and search for it. We already have all those parts collected since we did catch some of the salvage. Alright, so we have exactly what we need. That means we can go ahead and we're going to have to assemble a boarding party. So we only have 2 sailors right now, so we'll just grab both of them. You can have multiple boarding party members, depending on how many sailors your ship can hold. These are the ones that will actually go in and do the salvaging for you. And they may encounter some hazards along the way, so you have to kind of think about that and prepare for wherever you're trying to get into. But there are situations for sure where having particular strengths, whether it's strength, perception, intelligence, or endurance, is going to benefit you more than others. Different enemies and different hazards are easier to conquer with a specific statistic, and so your odds of conquering things vary greatly depending on who you bring on the mission. But it's pretty straightforward. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Especially in the early part of the game. I think later in the game it's going to be a little bit more important to make sure you customize who you're bringing on missions. But in these early missions, I haven't found any enemies or any hazards that are just that I would really care whether I had a good sailor versus just a generic one. And I do believe at some point there's a chance we'll see our first enemy. Yep. Okay, so this is how combat works. You have your basic turn order. The player who is active will be down here in the bottom, and then the next few people in turn order will be listed here. So the rat will move down here next, and then Aisha will move down to this slot, and then this character's second action will move. And we can see the next 4 people who are going to act. So we got to make our decisions based on that. Most of the time you have 4 options based on your statistics. So our endurance of 1 gives us a 48% chance to do 1 damage. Intelligence of 1 gives us a 62% chance to do 1 damage. Perception of 0 gives us a 0% chance to do 1 damage. And strength gives us a 1%, or a point of 1 gives us a 38% chance to do 3 damage. So you can see there are differences in both the damage that you'll deal to an enemy and also the chance that you'll be successful. Intelligence has the highest chance of success but the lowest damage. Strength has the highest damage but a lower chance of success. And so depending on the circumstance, it may be better to use strength, intelligence, or endurance, or perception. But generally speaking, it's pretty obvious what the best choice is in the early goings. The other thing you have is there are certain items that you collect throughout your salvaging, and some of those items can be used in combat to help deal with the threats. So some of them are specific to specific types of threats. I think there's like a crowbar that deals a guaranteed 1 point of damage. And then there's a number of other ones that it will interact with certain types of traps or other things. So we could potentially use an item, but we're not going to. We're just going to try take a roll here and see what happens. Get a little text. And so the rat dodged our attack, so he's going to make his attack. And in this case, the rat steals money from us. So each time he makes a successful attack, we're going to lose a little bit of our money, which is unfortunate. So now we can see Aisha has a different stat. She has perception, and we can see that perception and intelligence have similar odds and damage. So we're going to go ahead and use her perception attack. Alright, missed again. Celeste is up for round 2. These stats don't change, so the odds stay the same, the damage stays the same, unless you use an item that gives you more intelligence, endurance, or strength or something. Those numbers will remain the same. And again, we completed it. We got a bunch of stuff. These hazards are not much of a threat, and there's really no significant challenge to them that I've found in the early game. So don't feel like you have to have a crew with a bunch of really high level stats to go in and do salvaging. Salvaging is what you need to do. The enemies do get a little bit more dangerous, but they don't. I've never had an enemy actually really defeat me. Alright, we found another rat. In fact, the rewards for beating the enemies are almost better than what you find in the chests and stuff. So a lot of times you'll want to seek out enemies just so you can get more loot. Alright, we made it to the end. Go ahead and open the next gate. Again, I can steer with my camera, so I just point the camera where I want to go, turn my engines on, use my submarine controls to help me steer just a little bit, but primarily using the camera to decide where I'm going. We can see this glacier is kind of moving down, and we can see that we are now in a region with mines. Now I'm going to demonstrate something. I don't recommend that you do this, but you can see there's a mine there, and there's a little bit of information. So now that I've got my cursor on it, it's kind of highlighted in green. The white bar to the left is the health of that item, and the thing to the right is the type of attack that it will do to us. So you can see if we touch this, it explodes, and we took a bunch of hull damage. Now our guys are already going about repairing that hull damage, and if I go in here and I move Celeste back over here, we'll repair more quickly and more frequently. And so Every few seconds, those guys are going to repair a little bit of our hull. And then once it's filled back up, we can move Celeste back over to the helm. So you want to avoid the mines, obviously. Looks like there's a salvage over here. I'm going to go ahead and pick up our speed a little bit. And that's probably good enough. We'll go ahead and take her back over here. Having one sailor over here will still repair over time. It just doesn't do it as quickly. I'm going to point my cursor right there. And away we go. A little bit of salvage. You can see we're still getting repairs to our ship, even though we're in the 2D screen. So everything that's going on outside can still happen. Alright, let's go ahead and put it in reverse. Alright, we can see the golden fish are this direction, so that's the direction we need to head. And we definitely want to avoid the mines. We can avoid the mines by dipping underneath them. There is the option to shoot the mines, but again, we don't have a gunner yet. So we can't really shoot the mines until we get a gunner. Now, if you watched the last video, you'll know that we are about to recruit a gunner. And the compass means that there's a mission here that's important to us, so we're going to go ahead and complete this mission. I'm not going to talk to everybody, I'm just going to go grab our gunner. She just happens to be a fugitive, and that's going to cause some people to not be very happy when she gets out. Alright. So, Cat is a cannons officer. These are the officers that man each of the individual stations in our sub, and then the extra generic sailors can help assist them with their stats, as we pointed out before. So once we get her recruited, we'll be able to use our guns. And we might just have to use them like really quickly. So we are under attack. We need to get her and put her in the gunnery position ASAP. And we need to figure out who's shooting at us. Alright, there's a pirate. So as long as I can keep my cursor on him, where'd he go? You can see we've got about a quarter of his health down. Ah! Boom. Alright. When you take out a pirate, you have the ability to dock with them and steal any booty they had. So this little pirate ship doesn't have much in it. But we got some goodies. Wow, we got a little more this time. Alright. Anytime you're near a ship, even a ship that has people in it still, you can sometimes dock with them. A lot of times other captains will trade with you, which is pretty helpful. Other times pirates will attack you and you can take them out, and then you can dock with the scrap of their hull. Unfortunately, you can't salvage their hulls or take their ships. That would be kind of cool if you could, but I haven't seen the ability to do that yet. So now we have the ability to shoot mines, which is really helpful. If the mines get in our way, we can just use our gunner to shoot them. and we have our one crew member repairing our hull. We could move her into the gunnery slot, and by doing so, we could increase the chance for crit hits and accuracy. So like if I go ahead and I grab her and I move her over here, let's see what we get. We get a small bonus to our crit rate and a small bonus to our accuracy. So nothing too exciting. If our stats were significantly higher, we would get a bigger boost to those two specs. But because there's nobody in this pod, nobody's repairing the ship, so I'm actually going to move her back over here so we can continue to repair the ship. Alright, and if I want to shoot these mines, all I got to do is put my cursor on them and shoot, and we should be able to hit them. I don't know what the range of our weapon is exactly. You can see a little range indicator. And the mines that are really close together will chain react. This is a good place to practice your shooting. So I would definitely take my time when I'm moving through here at a slower speed and practice shooting the mines once you get your gunner locked in. That first part of the mission is a little bit scary because you got a lot to do, but you saw we only, even with the damage that we took, I think we were still at about 75% health, so it wasn't that bad. Swing around here, make sure we didn't miss anything. And I think we're going to need to go through this hole here. I have a feeling I'm going the wrong way, but we haven't been here yet, so maybe not. Door. Alright, we should be getting our sonar officer here pretty soon. Let's turn around here. Yeah. Yeah, we already did this. I think I just skipped that because we didn't really need any more salvage. You can see that submarine in the ice there. Okay, there's our golden fish over there. Somehow I missed them. Sort of got turned around, but we'll get there. I'm gonna kind of pass on getting some of the salvage here. Swim into here and they'll all disappear. They kind of head out in the direction you need to go. Give you a little indication of where you're supposed to be. We're not going to bother with that salvage, but we are going to go ahead and shoot some of these mines. This is a situation where I want to be very careful not to hit the walls. And we're going to slow down because we gotta dive underneath here. Now, you have a crush depth. Your ship is only rated for so deep, and when you start to dive too close to your crush depth, you'll hear the music change, you'll hear a few other things happen. Our crush depth is about 250 right now. So as long as we stay above 250, we won't have any problems. But if we get too deep, it can actually start to deal damage to our hull. I'm not going to bother with this salvage because I want to get through this first part of the tutorial. But all in all, I think this game is fantastic. I think if you want just a light-hearted exploration game with a little bit of a light linear narrative, semi-linear narrative, and just a really cool world to explore, some neat lore. It's great. You can get the whole thing for under 10 bucks, including all the DLC. So yeah, definitely check this one out. I think it's worth a few bucks and a few hours of your time, even if you're not really crazy about it. The one thing that I will highly, highly recommend is, like I said, get in, play around with the controls a little bit, and then try adjusting those camera settings until you find what you really like. So this glacier's fallen in and crushed this guy's pod. His sub is damaged, or wherever he's at. You need to get out of here before you die. Yep. You can come with us. The officer's star is cool. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, I'm going to pull out of there, and we're going to head into our ship. So now we have a sonar officer. You can see he's on the bed here. So I can grab Greg, throw him over here. And now we have access to sonar, which is cool. We'll show off sonar here in a minute. So in the tutorial, you basically get your 3 officers right up front, and then you get to hire these guys that can help each officer do their job a little better. So perception statistics will increase the range of our sonar by some percentage. We have a character, I believe she has perception. Yeah, perception of 1. So if I grab her and throw her into here, we get a 14% increase to the range of our perception. Now, we also got an officer star, and you see each of our officers has a star up to 4. We can actually use a star and increase, where's it at? Key items. Officer star. So a high honor among submarine officers. The star represents the officer's ability to command sailors. As such, gaining a star means the officer's station will hold 1 more sailor. So if I grab this officer star and I give it to Jay, Jay's now a level 2 helm officer. And what that means is I can actually put 2 sailors in there with him, and their stats combined will increase the bonuses that we get. So sailor management is a cool part of this game. But remember, you always want to have at least 1 sailor in here to do repairs. If you don't, and you take any damage, you won't be getting any repairs. Right now I'm going to go ahead and put her in the sonar because we're going to be demonstrating the sonar here in a second. Alright, so sonar is pretty cool. You hold down a button and charge it up, and then let it go. It's not going to let me do it yet. There it is. And it'll send out some waves, and we'll get to see that a little bit better here in a second. Alright. So, now we're out in the open. Out in the open ocean. this is a little scary for some people, a little freaky to just be out in the abyss. Sonar is really helpful in that it kind of directs you to where things are at. So if I hold down my sonar and I charge it up and I send it out, you'll see it'll light up everything, but it'll also see all those white dots on the side of the screen to the right. If I turn, those white dots basically are objects, probably salvage, but not always, that I can move towards. So they highlight objects. If I do it again, you'll notice I got a couple over here to the left as well. And so this is a really cool way. And then if I look down this canyon, you can see if it hits a surface, you'll actually see it run the surface. So in the dark, when it gets really, really dark, that is really, really cool thing that you can do. And the range of that, again, is directly related to the perception value of the extra sailors that you throw into the helm. Or not the helm, the sonar station. So we got a couple things we can do. There's definitely some salvage over here we can go pick up. But more importantly than that, we're supposed to make it to Tonsford. And so we're going to follow the fishies. Turn on my... Okay, also you'll notice right ahead of us, there's kind of like this swirly mess of water. These are actually currents, and if you get caught in a current, they can push you around a little bit, or you can jump in them, kind of like in that scene in Finding Nemo, and take a little trip, take a little ride, which is really cool. I love how the music kind of picks up as you get out here into the open ocean. I mean, it's just so fantastic. See all the bits of gobbledygook in the water. Decreases your visibility in places. Let's go ahead and send out some sonar waves. Yep, we're still moving in the right direction, I believe. I lost my golden fish. Where are they at? Okay, over this way. City of Ice, I believe, is what this place is called. I can't remember exactly. There's another ship. If we get close enough to it, we can dock with it. You can see the little icons to the right tell you basically what they have to offer. So this is actually a place we can dock and we can do some trade. So we'll talk to this fellow. I'm looking to trade, and basically what you want to do most of the time is sell almost all your loot. Obviously scrap metal is our ammunition, so we don't want to sell that, but fish fossils I haven't really found a use for. Dinars we can just trade in for money. Book pages, pots, books. Just sell all of that and make a bunch of money. Forge materials, these are the items that you use to craft your upgrades for your ship, so we rarely want to sell those until our inventory gets really, really full with them. And then obviously the key items, a lot of times they're upgrades for your sailors. Also, right now we just have a simple flak cannon. We can get better weapons later in the game, including torpedoes, which are pretty cool, but this ship doesn't actually have a torpedo pod. So if you want to use torpedoes, you'll have to start with the Mariana or upgrade your ship later on. He also has a barb. So this is an upgraded cannon. So actually, we could go ahead and grab this. Short range, high spread, quick fire bolt cannon. I haven't actually tried this before. We can we sell it? Use I to swap equipped cannons. he's not interested in buying our flak cannon. Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's exit this and take a look at our new gun. So if I use I, okay. I don't want to shoot him on accident. Alright, we're caught in a current here. We should break through it in just a second. Alright, so one thing we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use the map here just for a second. This tells us that we're heading in the right direction. You can see we're pointing this direction. This is the compass. I'm going to click that one. If you have multiple compasses on the map, you can click on different ones, and that will take you to a different quest. So right now the only quest we have is this one, the legendary mechanic. We're going to go try to talk to that guy that the dude in the dive bar told us about, Daniel, who fixed up his ship for him, and see if we can't get some upgrades ourselves. So using this map is pretty helpful. Another thing that I want to point out, you can zoom in and out of the map a little bit, and here's your compass right here to help you get directions if you want to use the compass. You can see there's a gate over here. This will take us to another portion of the world map. And so the Forgotten Fords is this starting area, and it's pretty massive. There's going to be at least 1, 2, 3 more regions that you unlock as a matter of getting through that gate. So that gate will probably take us to this next region, and there may be another gate to the next region and another gate to the final region. And each one of these regions is an entire instance of itself that's fairly large and complex. I've noticed that this first one is pretty safe. Like, there's not a lot of enemies in it, lots of salvage, so it's a real easy place to kind of get around, explore, get comfortable with the game. I have a feeling as you move to the later sections of the map, things get a lot more dangerous, more enemies, more things to run into. But you can also look at any of your active quests and how far you've gotten on them. You can check out your crew. You can check out your submarine. Notice we have 3 empty upgrade slots and all of our stats, weapons. So this is a cool screen to check out once you get to this point in the game. We're heading in the right direction. We're just going to go ahead and continue to do so. And then we'll be wrapping up this video pretty soon. But I think we've demonstrated and I've given some good tips for anybody who's looking to give this a try, any new players out there, or anybody who just likes exploration games. This is a lot of fun and very, very aesthetically pleasing, at least for me. So I'm really enjoying it. So we pretty much want to just travel east, if I'm not mistaken. I think there it is. That's where we're heading right there. Yep. And you can see it lights up because that's where our compass is. So there you go. A couple different ports that we can dock to. You saw the compass open up. So we're going to talk to this guy. He's going to basically give us the ability to do upgrades on our ship. And this is also the place where you'll come eventually to buy new submarines in the early part of the game. So he gives you all of these raw materials. These are ones that we were looking at before. And once you've picked those up, you can do upgrades to your ship. So we're going to go ahead and forge a depth upgrade. This is going to allow us to get down to about 500 feet. But it does take up one of our 3 remaining slots. We can dismantle those, but there's no need to do that for now. Alright, so you can see the compass is no longer red and yellow. That means that we've pretty much completed this quest. Alright, basically what he tells you is he can't give you any more free stuff. You got to go collect your own salvage, and then you can do more upgrades, obviously. Alright, she's going to come with us for free, and she is kind of an officer. So if we go here, where'd she go? Sherry the intern, she gives you all kinds of information on the types of upgrades. So if you have a specific type of upgrade that you want to know more about and what you need to collect, you can come talk to her at any time. She's not technically an officer. But it did show the officer badge initially when we picked her up, didn't it? But she doesn't have any stats, so she won't go on boarding missions with you. She's basically just a dictionary, you know, a Wikipedia kind of character that gives you information on the upgrades. So when you're out salvaging, you'll know what stuff to collect if you're looking for a particular upgrade. Alright, with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you would like to see more of it, please let me know in the comments below. But I think that this game is fantastic. I definitely recommend it for anybody who loves exploration games. And yeah, that's my official review of Diluvion Resubmerged. So check it out on Steam. It's on sale for the next 2 days. Pick it up for less than $10. Give it a try, see what you think. If you enjoy it, definitely let me know. If you didn't like it, also let me know and tell me what you didn't like about it. I definitely believe there are some flaws to the game still, even with the patch, but I think it's well worth the money they're asking for it. And I love supporting developers who put out fantastic looking, feeling, and enjoyable games. And so far this has been that for me. So I know I got my brother to pick it up recently, and he's having fun with it. I'm having fun with it. A lot of people on the forums that I'm reading are having fun with it, and I hope you guys have fun with it too. Until next time, this has been The Nose Plays. You guys have a great day.